All right, I'm back, and as you can see, I'm about ready to play Deal or No Deal. This is for educational purposes, of course. But what we're going to do is we're going to play Deal or No Deal, and I think this is interesting because it can help us think about risk aversion, and if this works out, it will help us think about loss aversion as well. Okay, so you guys understand what Deal or No Deal is. This used to be a game show. I guess it's still on the Game Show Network, but Howie Mandel is the host. He has hairdo like mine. He'd show up and he'd basically try to find some mentally unstable individual to come out and select a case. And in each of these cases is one of these dollar values. That is, I have a 1 in 20. There's 26 cases. I have a 1 in 26 chance of getting a dollar, or I'm sorry, that's a penny. A 1 in 26 chance of getting a dollar, and so on. The objective is to pick the case that has $1 million in it. Okay, this is obviously is hard to do. 1 in 26 chance. What happens is after I pick the case, then the banker will get on, and the banker will ask me, well, we'll figure out how to play this. The banker will basically try to buy my case from me, and then it becomes a game of me evaluating the expected return relative to the certainty equivalent, which is the equivalent of what the banker is going to offer. Okay. So let's say I'm the mentally unstable individual coming out on the stage. Howie Mandel makes me select a number. I'm going to go with number. I'm going to go with number 23 for Michael Jordan, not for LeBron James. That's super important to understand that this is a Michael Jordan pick, not a LeBron James pick. Okay. So I've selected 23. I hope that $1 million is in there. I'm not sure what $1 million, what dollar amount is in there. But then what I have to do now is I have to choose 6 cases, and they'll reveal what numbers are in those cases. By the way, I'm super unlucky, and I usually lose bad at this game. All right, so FYI. But I think by the time we get done with it, it'll be important. So before we begin, if I were to take the expected value or the expected return of this case, I take a 1 in 26 probability times this, plus a 1 in 26 probability times $1, plus a 1 in 26 probability times $5, plus 1 in 26 probability times $10, and so on. My case is about worth a little over $30,000, I think. Okay, the expected value of my case. I've got to select 6 cases. I'm just going to randomly select these cases. They're going to tell me what's happening here. Ooh, that stunk. I'm really wanting to open cases on the left-hand side. Apparently, I have an inability to do that. So here's the banker's offer. It's $32,000. To determine whether I don't have time, so I'm going to say no deal, but to determine whether I'm risk averse, I'd have to calculate the expected return given the certainty equivalent. Okay. So anyway, the banker's deal was $32,000. I would have had to say a 1 in 20 chance of this, plus a 1 in 20 chance of this, plus a 1 in 20 chance times this, and so on, and evaluate whether or not I'm risk averse. Most of the time, the banker's offer, the certainty equivalent, is always lower than the expected return. I said most of the time is always, so that didn't make sense. But most of the time, the banker will give you a deal that's less than the expected return, playing on this idea that the certainty equivalent is less than the expected return, and therefore they're appealing to your risk aversion. All right, I got to choose 5 cases. I'm just randomly selecting here. Lucky number 13. So far, so good. Oh, that stunk. Gotta choose one more. That stunk worse. Okay, here's the banker's offer. I'm going to say deal or no deal. It's about $60,000. To determine whether or not I'm risk averse, I would take the probability. Right, the probability. How many cases do I have left? Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cases. A 1 in 15 chance times this, plus a 1 in 15 chance times this, plus a 1 in 15 chance times this, and so on. And likely the banker's deal that at $60,000 was less than the expected return on my case. Okay, so hopefully you understand what's going on. We're going to play a few more rounds here. Okay, I'm just randomly selecting these cases. I'm not going to lie. Well, just because I said that, yeah. I'm doing pretty good, okay? I'm going to say no deal. It's about $73,000, okay? I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cases left. To calculate the expected return, a 1 in 11 probability times this, plus a 1 in 11 probability times this, plus a 1 in 11 probability times this, and so on. The banker's deal, the certainty equivalent, the amount of money I could get if I chose not to gamble would likely be less than the expected return, although I'm playing this game on the fly and can't figure that out, okay? I got to pick 3 cases here. I told you I suck at this game horribly, horribly. Man, this is not going to work out for us. I'm going to say no deal, whatever. All right, I got to pick 2 cases. I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cases left. I got a 1 in 8 chance of having $1 million in my case. Finally. That's all right. I'm at $110. That's not bad, but I say no deal. All right. So let's see here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got a 1 in 6 chance of $1 million in my case. They just offered me $110,000. Of course, I said no deal. I'm risk averse, right? The expected return is likely more than that certainty equivalent, right? Let me make sure. Yeah, a 1 in 6 probability times $1 million is going to be $167,000. She offered me 100 and something, right? So again, the banker is offering me less, a certainty equivalent less than my expected return. I got to pick 1 case. And in order for this to work out well, me to teach the principle, I have to keep the $1 million case alive. And because I said that out loud, I just jinxed myself. I told you. Freak. That sucks. I don't think this is going to work. Whatever. 1 case. No deal. I told you I'm the worst at this game. This is awful. Oh my gosh. The banker offered me $3. This is awful. This is bad. No deal. Okay. So let's pretend. Let's pretend that game went a little different. All right. So let's pretend instead of $5 and $1, LeBron James, man, I shouldn't have picked 23. Let's say instead of $5 and $1, let's say I had $1 million and $1. Okay. So here's where loss aversion. Do you understand what happened? I just played a game of deal or no deal, and I showed you how awful I am at that game. All right. But let me. This is important. So let's say that there's 2 values left on the board, $1 million and $1. All right. And let's say the offer came through, and the offer came through at $450,000. Okay. Do you understand? So the offer is at $450,000. That's my certainty equivalent. The expected value of my case is $500,000.50. That's a 50-50 chance of this having $1 million plus a 50-50 chance of this having $1. Okay, so my expected return is $500,000.50. The banker came in and offered me a certainty equivalent of $450,000. Trying to appeal to my risk aversion, I would likely say, oh, I'm risk averse, and therefore I'm going to remain risk averse, and therefore I'm going to take the expected return of my case is higher than the certainty equivalent, so I'm going to continue to play. If I were to ask you, and if I were to ask my class, who in here would take the certainty equivalent of $450,000, even though it's less than the expected return of the case? I am guessing that every hand, if you're being honest with yourself, every hand would go up. Everybody would take the certainty equivalent. Why? Because you have a 50-50 chance of losing $450,000 and walking away with $1. Okay. Of course, I'm probably going to walk away with $1 because I took no deal. Let's see. Oh my gosh, amazing. It's a miracle. Look at that. I picked the one case with $1 in it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a little frustrated at that, but whatever. Ask me to try again. I know that it's just fake money, but I think that Deal or No Deal helps us understand loss aversion. The expected return of the case was always greater than the certainty equivalent that the banker was offering, and therefore the banker is appealing to our risk aversion. But when it comes down to it, when the possibility of $1 million versus $1 exists, all of us are going to take that certainty equivalent. The loss is too great. And therefore, this is the problem with expected utility theory, is it doesn't fully explain the likelihood that our utility function changes. In the previous video, we drew a utility function that was convex in the loss domain and concave in the extreme gain domain. And that's what happens more likely. Human nature is just, we like to avoid risk. I don't understand whether it's because life is set up that we die and that's the ultimate loss and therefore we're trying to avoid dying all the time. Or I don't know if it's because of the way that we're parented, right? Like what I do with my kids, I threaten to take away everything that I can think of in order to change their behavior. And I don't know if it's nature or nurture, but for some reason we are extremely loss averse. And that has an effect on how we would invest. Let me show you. All right, here's a research paper titled Expected Idiosyncratic Skewness. And if you've watched the videos in this section in Module 3 before, you know what skewness is. All right, let me show you what's going on here. This is interesting. So what happens is these guys, let's see where I'm at here. These guys have calculated the skewness of stocks, individual stocks, all right? And then they've placed them into portfolios. And recall what skewness looks like, okay? Recall what negative skewness looks like. Let me show you here. Picture of negative skewness. So if I were to click on this particular stock has positive skewness. Come on. This particular stock has positive skewness. Notice that the mean return might be somewhere right here. And what happens is the majority of the distribution is on the left-hand side of the mean, but there's a small probability of earning huge returns, okay? On the other hand, if the mean is here on this stock that is negatively skewed, the majority of the return distribution is on the positive side of the negative of the mean, but there's a small probability of losing a whole bunch. So to the extent that individuals are loss averse, they might be willing to buy stocks with positive skewness, even though the majority of the distribution is on the left-hand side of the mean, and sell stocks with negative skewness because of this small probability of getting creamed. Does that make sense? Of losing a bunch of money. A loss-averse individual will avoid negative skewness and maybe buy positive skewness. Now compound that with this weird idea, this other behavioral idea that we love to hit home runs. Let me just give you some statistics off the top of my head. Tony Gwynn, a Major League Baseball player, great, hit, I think his lifetime batting average was 334. He only hit, or 338. He only hit 134 home runs during his 20-year career. And on the other hand, you have Sammy Sosa, who struck out 2,300 times, a lifetime 267 hitter, and he hit probably like 609 home runs, I'm guessing. You can check my stats there, okay? So you have two distinctly different types of hitters. Tony Gwynn, who hits base hits and hardly ever strikes out, and Sammy Sosa, who hits home runs and strikes out all the time, okay? And the question is who was paid more? What baseball team, what owner of a baseball organization paid these individuals more? Did the Padres pay Tony Gwynn more, or did the owners of the various teams that Sammy Sosa played for, did they pay him more? And sure enough, Tony Gwynn, I don't remember what his career earnings were, maybe 40 million over his 20-year career. And Sammy Sosa's career earnings were 124 million, right? So people will be willing to overpay for home runs. Likewise, it might be true that in the stock market, people will be willing to overpay for a small chance of hitting a huge home run. And certainly loss-averse people will avoid buying negatively skewed stocks. I hope this is making sense. And what happens is the following. So in this research paper, they sort stocks into portfolios based on skewness. These are stocks with the lowest skewness. These are stocks with the highest positive skewness. So the most negatively skewed stocks and the most positively skewed stocks. So look at what happens. When they just look at mean returns, so they sort this data every month, and then they look at the returns the next month and see what happens. And look at what happens here. So stocks that have positive skewness significantly underperform stocks that have negative skewness. All right? That is, stocks that have positive skewness might be overpriced relative to stocks that have negative skewness. Stocks that have negative skewness are underpriced. So the idea here is, look, this is 67 basis points per month. If you put together a trading strategy simply to buy stocks with low skewness, negative skewness, and sell stocks with positive skewness, what is that? 0.674 times 12. Look, I'm getting an 8% return premium just by taking advantage of the loss-averse individuals and buying stocks with negative skewness, and taking advantage of the people that always want to hit home runs and selling stocks with positive skewness. I could outperform the market or get a return premium of 8%. Okay. So the idea of loss aversion, like, listen, we're going to talk about risk aversion the rest of the semester here. And everything that we talk about will be about risk aversion. But loss aversion matters, all right? And it appears that loss aversion is affecting the prices of stocks. People want to avoid losses, so the demand for stocks with negative skewness is very low. The prices they're underpriced, and those stocks typically outperform, while stocks with positive skewness, because people demand these stocks, they want to hit home runs, these stocks are overpriced and they typically underperform the market.